America is broken today more than it has ever been, and people are truly worried about the future of this country. Charles Cook is what many believe to be the best pollster in the country. His recent polling data has found that the American people are fed up with President Obama, Harry Reid, and Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats. They see uncontrolled spending and debt as a threat to America's future, and they may not be in the majority this fall. But this polling also shows that the American people have no confidence in Republicans either. Americans know that neither party has any answers. And today I'm going to give you answers. I want to share with you a world order that may seem new, but it's actually the oldest and best world order of all time. Today I'm going to show you how a true understanding of God's long-term purpose for us in this world can provide a clear roadmap to right this country. It's based on one very important concept. Politics is downstream from culture. That's the main foundation of this whole idea. The fact is, if we want to change America, we have to start with our culture. We can't rely on just government to solve our problems. In fact, until we realize that politics and, as I will discuss later, jurisprudence is downstream from culture, we have no hope in fulfilling America's purpose. This plan is based on faith, but its implementation or its roadmap is libertarian. During the American Revolution, a radical revolutionary named Thomas Paine published a pamphlet called Common Sense. He began the book by saying, "Some writers of the day have so confounded government with society as to leave little or no distinction between the two." Thomas Paine argues that government and society are distinct and separate. Society is all of us, our hopes, our wants, our dreams, and our needs. Society is the interaction that creates friends, love, and families. Society, according to Paine, is a blessing born of man's virtue. Paine goes on to observe that were the impulses of conscience clear, uniform, and irresistibly obeyed, man would need no other lawgiver, but that is not the case, and he finds it necessary to surrender up a part of his property to government in order to furnish the means for the protection of the rest. To Paine, government is an institution and a curse born of man's vice, his inability to obey a clear and uniform conscience. We see the consequences of confusing government and society writ large in the small country of Greece. It may be a small, faraway country, but what is happening there should alarm us. Just a few months ago, several people were killed in the streets as Athenians rioted against their government. The problem simply is that Greece is bankrupt, and the Eurozone, in an attempt to prevent the contagion from spreading, has agreed to bail out Greece. But only if the Greeks cut pensions, raise the retirement age, and slash government services. The root cause of the Greek crisis is deeper than government granting entitlements far beyond its means, though. The problem is that the Greeks have, like the Western world around it, confused government with society. Liberal Americans, including the present administration, seek to emulate the European welfare state. They seek to create a new world where government is no longer constrained to the realm of preventing vice. They seek a world where only the government provides for society. The EU is ordering Greece to pass legislation, and in doing so has done something incredible and incredibly alarming. Without a single soldier marching, Greece has surrendered its sovereignty to the European Union. Greece is experiencing the fruit of social and political ideas developed a long time ago by Karl Marx and Charles Darwin. The confusion Thomas Paine spoke of the previous century were capitalized upon by these thinkers and devotees like Hitler, Stalin, and Mussolini. It manifested itself in the forms of government like communism, fascism, socialism, and in America, liberal progressivism. Liberal progressivism influenced Americans like Teddy Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, FDR, and now President Obama. Over the last 80 years, it has led Americans, both liberal and conservatives, both Republicans and Democrats, to be like Greece, looking only to government to solve our problems. In 2008, Jonah Goldberg wrote a book called Liberal Fascism. In it, he makes a fascinating statement. Contemporary thinkers believe that the political spectrum of today consists of fascism on the extreme right and communism on the extreme left. They would love to have you believe that our choices in politics are limited to the ideas expressed within this spectrum. However, this spectrum only leaves us with ideas and systems that are inspired by man, not by God. Jonah Goldberg says that fascism is not the extreme of conservatism. In fact, he makes the case that socialism, communism, fascism, and liberal progressivism are all from the left. If you agree with Jonah Goldberg, then every ism, as I call it, that every ism is on the left, then you have to ask yourself what remains on the right. And more importantly, is it sufficient to cure what ails us in America? In other words, what political, ideological, philosophical tools do we use to overcome 80 years of the isms that have come from the left? We have the Constitution of the United States of America and the wisdom of the Founding Fathers, both of which speak to limited government. We have free market capitalism, which speaks to business, not really government or society. And none of these address how our modern society should get organized in order to make small government and freedom work. It seems that the only reference to society are the vague little platoons of de Tocqueville's Democracy in America and George Bush's 1,000 Points of Light. It appears that after limiting government and ensuring religious freedoms, the Founding Fathers thought that society would just take care of itself. I think Thomas Paine was right. They were confused or unenlightened on this issue, and if they were here today, I believe that they would offer nothing more than their small government views if asked how to write America. Sometime after the founding of our country, in the 19th century, a Dutch statesman and theologian named Abraham Kuyper delivered what became known as the Stone Lectures at the Princeton Theological Seminary. In one of these lectures, Kuyper stated that all of life should be lived coram Deo, or before the face of God. He states, wherever man may stand, whatever he may do, to whatever he may apply his hand, in agriculture, in commerce, or in industry, constantly standing before the face of his God. He is employed in the service of his God. He is strictly to obey his God. And above all else, he has to aim at the glory of his God. In the beginning, Kuyper argued persuasively God established four institutions, each with its own structure and purpose, as a means by which God provides and protects people in a free society. It is known as the creation or the cultural mandate, and it is based on the institutions established in the Garden of Genesis. The institutions are faith, family, work, and government. I first became acquainted with the four institutions many years ago from my friend and mentor, Fred Bigler. At the time, Fred was a probation officer for Stanislaus County. Trust, I was not on probation, that's not working. But Fred is also a devoted Christian. And in his job, Fred sees the worst in society and used his knowledge as a Christian to help people in any way he could. Fred was a proponent of the four institutions. He believed that if a person was properly related to the authority figures in each institution, they would have a firm foundation in which to live their lives. Simply put, if a person honored his mother and his father, maintained a clear conscience before God, obeyed the laws of the land, and learned how to work, he or she would have a firm foundation on which to build a life. Indeed, for Christians, it is on this foundation and through these four institutions that we pursue happiness before God. It occurred to me that if God established the four institutions to protect and provide, shouldn't we as citizens be concerned about the strength and viability of these institutions? Even more, if we as people of faith pursue happiness through these four institutions, then don't we have a constitutional right of access to these institutions? If this logic holds, then each of us has a constitutional right to a mother and a father, a vocation, the free exercise of all aspects of religion, and a government that protects us in this pursuit. If you believe that God established, since the beginning of time, four institutions in which to protect us and provide for us, then you must also believe that we, as believers, pursue happiness in this way. If this is how we pursue happiness, then every American has a constitutional right of access to these four institutions. 80 years of Marx, Darwin, socialism, communism, fascism, and liberal progressivism has led to a staggering amount of deficit and debt, dramatic growth of dependency on government, and real structural damage to America's social institutions. The United States and even the Western world can no longer sustain the confusion between government and society expressed by Thomas Paine. The four institutions, along with limited government powers expressed in the Constitution, provides a roadmap to rebuild our country It is also a potent weapon to end 80 years of liberal progressivism and resume our role as a beacon of freedom in the world. We now have 4 institutions, not one, to build a more perfect union. To reestablish the 4 institutions in America, we must embark on 2 major tasks. One is to put charity back in the church, and the second is to end fatherlessness in the family. Why is it important for charity to come from the church? Because faith leads to independence, and faith and independence lead to charity, and charity spreads faith. It is the persuasive, faith-building nature of charity that leads to the independence that is so necessary in a free society. In the Bible, 2 Peter 1:5 shows the importance of charity. And beside this, I'm quoting, beside this, giving all diligence, add to your faith virtue, add to virtue knowledge, and to knowledge self-control, and to self-control patience, and to patience godliness, or what I call independence, and to godliness or independence brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness charity. The journey from faith to charity creates a consistent cycle of independence building, and this cycle begins anew with charity spreading faith. What's more, 2 Peter 1:5 is the definition of the free exercise of religion. The free exercise of all religions everywhere consists of our relationship with God and our relationship with one another. In this passage, 2 Peter, our relationship with God is expressed from faith to godliness. That gets us to independence. And our relationship with one another is expressed in brotherly kindness and charity. Charity comes from the church, and it is a free exercise of our religion, and it should be protected under the First Amendment to the Constitution. By returning charity to the church but returning charity to the church is not a question of just giving more. And I really want to make that point because it's very important. Americans give plenty. The problem is we give. The problem is how we give, and most of it is poorly directed. It builds dependency, not independence. You might be surprised to learn that 2/3 of all charity in the United States comes from the federal government. Here are the statistics. You and I collectively give about $300 billion a year to churches and nonprofits. Corporations and foundations give about $100 billion a year. Kind of surprising, I thought it would be the opposite. Your government gives about $800 billion a year to charity. 2/3 of the charity in the United States is compulsory. It's distributed to create a class of Americans dependent on government. The glorious cycle of faith that creates independence and giving today is stifled by compulsory taxation and social spending by our government, creating a downward spiral of dependency and debt and further taxation. It will take a long time to end government charity. And as I said in the beginning, jurisprudence is downstream from culture as well as politics. And it's very, very doable. The second large task is to end fatherlessness in the home. Jack Cashel explains this very well in his book called What's the Matter with California? He says California can solve its problems in a generation if only its creative class can see what those problems were. And he goes on to portray endless stories of California crimes and criminals, all from fatherless homes, to explain how fatherlessness has broken down our society, creating a huge social burden of state dependency. Ending fatherlessness must begin with the proper care of every child in this country. Art Rolnick is a firm believer of this. Art is the senior vice president of the 9th District of the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis. He believes that investing in human capital is the best form of economic development. He has the statistics to prove it. Minnesota has developed a child care scholarship program that serves the fatherless child at birth along with the mother. Statistics show that if children don't get critical care early in life, their burden on society is great. Mothers also receive proper care to help break the poverty cycle. Art can prove that investing in human capital early in life gets social and economic results. Minnesota is showing results from this program and needs to be taken national. To summarize, in summary, the United States and the West cannot survive liberal progressivism much longer. However, we cannot begin to fix America without knowing how America fits within the larger plan for men and women. The larger plan shows us that four institutions, not one, were established to protect us and to provide for us, and that under the Constitution, in the pursuit of happiness, every American has a right to access these institutions. Our job is to replace liberal progressivism with four strong institutions, each performing according to its purpose. To restore the four institutions, we must begin to change our culture, not politics. We can change our culture by returning charity to the church and by ending fatherlessness in the family. To do this, we must gather together a private fund, a large fund, distribute these funds through churches and faith organizations for the specific purpose of rebuilding the family through a private national version of the Art Rule Minnesota Child Care Plan. At the same time, a judicial effort must begin to get government out of charity. And in the end, what should government do in all this? Hopefully not get in the way. Government would react like it always does. By changing our culture, government would react by becoming more conservative and small, better at doing what it was established to do while the other institutions flourish. And again, as I said, this is a new concept. It's big picture, and I'd be real curious to know what you think of it.